Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Convo. I am Ebony Chappelle, serving as Director of Programs and Communication for Leadership Indianapolis. And I am so excited to be back with another episode of the Convo on this blistery Monday morning. Winter is officially here, I guess. Yeah, so you know what? It's one of those things where you have to embrace the changing of the seasons, embrace what it is that we're getting a chance to experience. We are in Indiana after all, so that is a part of it. Again, today we are going to be talking with Rhonda L. Bayless, who is the executive director and founder, which we're going to talk a little bit about in just a second, of CWU, which is the Centers for Urban Wellness, Centers of Wellness for Urban Women. Goodness gracious. Let me get it together. So, the Convo series provides opportunities to learn more about community leaders, organizations, issues, and opportunities in our city. So, today we're going to be talking to Rhonda, who founded the Centers of Wellness for Urban Women in 2007, as she saw a need for women to prioritize their health and well being. Since that time, Siwu has gone on to do amazing things. Rhonda has gone on to do amazing things through her long history of working in the health field, supporting mental health awareness, community centric wellness initiatives, and positive outcomes for people living with HIV across the state of Indiana. So, without further ado, I am going to welcome Miss Rhonda L. Bayless. Hi, Rhonda. How are you?
Hi, Ebony. Thank you so much. I'm so humbled and grateful for this opportunity. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. You are most welcome. I am excited to be talking with you. I cannot remember exactly the first time we met, but I just recall being so impressed knowing about all of the things that you've done to really positively impact health outcomes
Mhm.
for people in our community, and the way that your work uniquely positions people to care about one another and build that
Uh,
community amongst themselves, as opposed to always looking like it's some outside thing. So I don't know if that's something that you immediately identify, like, yeah, that was the plan all along, or if it kind of evolved to be that way.
um, Probably both, to be very honest. I think, as you mentioned, my professional career started in the HIV field at a time where that community was still kind of figuring out how it's going to address this deadly disease, right? And
Mhm.
so it was such a grassroots vibe, but it was also such a tight community, right? And so learning from how people came together um, to really pull the resources, support to get behind fighting this deadly illness really definitely is carried on. I tell people
Mhm.
all the time, I would not be able to do the work that I do today if it was not starting off in that community and doing that work in the late 90s.
Mhm.
So yeah, so like I said, I don't know if it intentionally I went in saying, well, this is how the approach is going to be and this is how we're going to do it. But I just think organically, in some ways, that experience still kind of lives through how I approach community and especially community health and wellness.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, we talked a little bit about your background in the health field in general. When you started CWU, what
Mhm.
was the impetus behind saying we need this sort of organization to help with health outcomes specifically for urban women?
Well, once again, it kind of started with the work I was doing in HIV. And so there was a program called Woman to Woman that I was working on. It was an initiative focusing on Black women and HIV. And so what we were finding is that, yeah, we were doing all the health promotion stuff. This is what HIV is, this is how you use a condom, blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
And the women were coming back going, that's good, but
Mm.
I hear you over there. But I have substance use, I have housing issues, I have all these other things. And so we weren't even equipped to do that kind of work, right? Like we were like,
Mm.
wait a minute, we're funded to do this kind of thing, and found ourselves diving into all those now social determinants of health, right? Like
Mhm.
then there was no title to it. It's like people got stuff and we got to deal with the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and so literally was sitting in the office with my assistants and started talking about like what is it that we were missing in this work, right? Like what are we not doing? And it was centering women first. We were so focused on disease prevention, right? Like
Mhm.
you got to
Mhm.
know this information, and here's the condom, here's the stuff, change. And we're like, no, we really got to help women first see themselves as something valuable, that this is obtainable, right? Like I think sometimes in the health field, we kind of give these lofty goals that are just so far fetched. And that's why people sometimes feel like they're set up to fail. And so
Mm.
that is kind of how CWU was birthed. I really did my due diligence back then and started looking at organizations across the country. And there were some organizations in California, and there was a couple in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, I feel it. Like this could happen because I have an examples, right? um, and start kind of pulling things together, and then started recruiting like-minded women. I mean, see, what at the beginning was 100% volunteers.
Mm.
Um, and so this crew of women, we were all like, okay, yeah, this makes sense to center women, right? First, whole health, top to bottom. So that's when we start incorporating 7 dimensions of wellness. We're going to talk you through all of it, and you get to be the deciding factor of how your health, what your health looks like, right? I,
Mm.
I don't go in and telling you this is how you have to do it or whatever. We're going to work with your resources, your culture, your family structure, all those things, and saying, okay, this is what it looks like for you today. Now that could change, right?
Mhm.
Because think factors change. But so that is kind of how we, and I started looking at how Siwu should be out here. Now, mind you, funders weren't there.
Mhm.
Really, community, to be very honest, wasn't there yet, right? Like, it's a very different
Mhm.
vibe right now with wellness now, because you just kind of see it everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the thing. It was not that, especially for Black and Brown women then. You saw white women talking about it, but we weren't
Mhm.
all the way there yet in not doing just a disease prevention focus.
Got
So that's
it.
kind of how we came about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what I find really interesting? Everything you're saying is specific to your experience, but I feel like it's translatable to all of this other work, specifically in the nonprofit field where we are
Mm-hmm.
doing things that are direct service to the
Mm-hmm.
community in some way. The temptation can be there to kind of like stay on course, like this is what we said we're going to do, like we're going to only do that, and then not look up and around to recognize, okay, well, this is how people are actually interacting. These are the things
Mm-hmm.
that they're telling us that they need. And yeah, like you said, the funders weren't there yet, community wasn't on board yet. But
Mm-hmm.
you all knew from being proximate to the people that you were serving what made the most sense. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure having lived experience as well, because you identify with the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
What is your advice when it comes to that, to paying attention to what's going on around you and not being so stuck on the program that you miss, how you could really be impactful?
Well, I think that's it's ego. You gotta check you gotta check your
Okay.
ego. Because I think what it is that we, for founders and for folks who are starting up businesses, and it's passion first, right? Like, oh, I
Mm,
really want to do this thing.
yeah.
If you don't move it from, especially if you're doing service to the people you're serving, you're gonna miss it. You're gonna mess up. Because that's why you're doing it. You're not doing it because you decided that this is what you want to do. So at every turn, it's always about how and who we're delivering the services for, and how we're
Mhm.
being a part of that community. So even when you look at the programs and services of Seafood throughout, mission hasn't changed, how we implement changed
Mm,
based on what's happening in the community. So when we started, there wasn't a lot of yoga studios, especially for, us. There
mhm,
wasn't a lot of
mhm,
yogis of color. There's only a couple that we really identified. There weren't spaces, a lot of for us to do things. So we were like, okay, then we need to be accessible. We did yoga mat drives. We were doing all these things, we were paying yogis to come in like, hey, but when we start seeing more yoga folks, guess who? We don't need to do the yoga folks. We don't need to necessarily do that. How do we move people to those yoga folks, right? Like, so even on our Instagram, you always see us posting everything, everybody else's stuff. Because it's about access, right? There's more places now for us to do wellness activities. So we don't have to necessarily do that. But I need to still get people to these places because it's really about access. So that's just a shift. That's not about ego, because guess what? We don't got to do that anymore, right? If I stayed on course on this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, we're not doing a service. I would rather support the yoga, the wellness providers. If we have funding, well, let me pay you, because a lot of times our folks get underpaid in those spaces anyway, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
the folks who are doing classes at other places, you know, may be able to charge $20 a yoga class, but because we have such a connection to our community, we will undercut that, right? We'll only charge $10. We'll charge $7. And so we're per head are not even going to get ahead in that space. So there are just times where we, as Siwoo says, like, pay providers as much as we can, open up access. We don't have to be the implementers of those kinds of things. So looking at this whole wellness space now, it's where's the gaps? Where do we need to fill? How do we make sure this is all still aligning for community and for what women are saying they need and want? So that's kind of
Yeah.
where we are right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fantastic. We brought up the F word a couple times, founder. Don't want anybody to
Yeah.
clutch their pearls. It's not a bad word, but could be a challenging position to be in. So
Yeah.
before we hopped on live, you mentioned that now when you all are onboarding new team members to Siwoo, the fact of you being a founder is not included in the conversation as much anymore.
Mhm.
Tell us about the thought process behind that. Yeah.
I don't find it that important. I mean, that's the
Okay.
Rhonda thing. There could be plenty of people in the community that disagree with that. I don't
Hmm.
find that as important now in the game. I think also it help people lose sight of the work sometimes and what we need to do. And that when I have a team, I want the team to be invested in the mission and not invested in Rhonda, right?
Mm.
It's not my direction and my vision of what Siwoo does and how we do it. There's plenty of times where I'm over here and board is over here, and I'm going, okay, we got to do it the board, right? Like, I
Yeah.
get it. It was up. So I want that. I don't want it to be always me, and I don't want it to be caught up. Founder, there is a thing
Yeah,
where
founder syndrome.
founder
Mhm.
syndrome can mess up an organization, right? If
Yeah.
somebody has been there forever, um, you've seen organizations when their founder or their long-term ED leaves, everybody leaves with them, you know, money leaves, all that.
Mhm.
And I don't want that that's not the legacy that I wanted for the organization. I want people to be invested in the mission and
Mhm.
that we are here to center the lives of women, BIPOC women, and especially Black women, right? Like,
Yeah.
that is our work and that is who we are. And that's how I want you to be onboarded, because you believe in that, not a founder thing or this is Rhonda's, or I hate that. This is Rhonda's org. And I'm like, it is not my organization.
Mm.
It is a public thing. It's a public
Yes.
charity. I don't get to take it
Mhm.
with me. I don't own it. I don't any of those things, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for organizations who are, you know, people who are founders to just be very clear that one, if you are a nonprofit, you don't own it, right? Is it public charity? That's why you did it. You created it because you wanted something to be of value to the community and of service.
Mhm.
Um, onboarding people who are not necessarily just wrapped around you, right? Like just your connection. I mean, that's great. Initially, that's what's going to happen anyway. Yeah, Rhonda, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, to
you
get
know,
things going, you pour
yeah,
what you have into it, but you're right,
yeah.
at
Come
some
on.
point, it needs to shift.
It
Yeah.
needs there needs to be a shift where people are like, no, this is truly about the mission. Because if
Mhm.
something happens to me today, I absolutely 100% hope the board of directors that I have will pick up and keep on going, and that seaweed will still be around, that it doesn't
Yeah.
stop because Rhonda stopped. Or if I say tomorrow that, you know what, this is no longer something that I want to do, that is still going to keep going. Like,
Yeah.
being a founder is because you want it to continue. You want to do this. You want this to
Mhm.
happen in the community, not just to stop because you stop. Not that's where that ego thing. And sometimes I think founders have to kind of go,
Yeah.
what is that? Like, how do I
Mhm.
feel about that? So it is, I think it's important, if you're leading an organization that you founded, that you kind of, I don't say disconnect from that thing or that ownership thing, um, but you're gonna have to a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to make sure it's effective, and that you're working.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
loosen up the grip on it a little bit.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
even got away from, like, on our website, there used to be a whole thing about me, the
Mhm.
founder, blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, girl, take that over there. But
Yeah.
that worked. Like I said, worked in the first year or two, right? Made
Mhm.
sense because we're new
Mhm.
and people trying to figure it out. But it is
Yeah.
so unnecessary for people to
Mhm.
know that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there are so many pieces of what you shared that are valuable in thinking about what the work really is ultimately and what legacy looks like. So I appreciate you for sharing that. One of my favorite questions to ask people on the convo is about leadership lessons that have helped guide them on their journey. So, is there any particular person or particular leadership experience that you think really helped to shape how you lead your organization or the organization that you're affiliated with? I went right back to it. Like we just talked about that. But
Okay.
Seawolf, yes,
No, I
Seawolf.
mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
God, that's interesting. I've been very, very, very blessed to
Mm,
have multiple people throughout my career who have invested time in believing in me. And I think it's always been just go for it. Like, right? Like, just go for it. But then I think there is always the balancing thing too, right? Like enforcing. And you would think, and this always happens, that you do a certain work and you don't do the work, that you don't apply it to
no,
yourself.
no, because it's
And
for
so,
everybody else.
right, like, you guys do that. So there's that balancing thing. But I think it was being doing your due diligence is, I think it's so invaluable to folks who are passionate about a particular thing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so for me, I think as a good leader, at all points, is doing my due diligence and making sure I understand what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. If there's more things I need to learn about the thing that I'm doing, go learn that thing.
Mhm.
And being how to operate when you're feeling fearful, because you're in new spaces and new rooms, and being assured that I know what I know. If I don't know it, it's okay to say I don't know something,
Mhm.
but what I do know, I'm very assured of, and I'll let you know. So, like I said, I think there's multiple things in multiple situations, but I definitely would say due diligence, and keep growing, because my passion doesn't make is I don't necessarily know things because I'm passionate about something, right? Like, just because
Mm,
I'm really interested in health and wellness doesn't mean I know everything about health and wellness. So
yeah.
I got to make sure that as a leader, I'm very clear about what is happening and how it's happening, um, and in all things balance for myself, right? Like, know when it's okay to say no. I'm not doing that. I don't need to go to that thing.
Mhm.
And I get criticized. The one thing that I have experienced in Indianapolis, Indiana, is if I don't go to, you didn't go to the event that was over there, or you weren't, why don't you I ever see you at things? Because that's my balance. Right? Those things
Yeah.
turn in, Ebony, you go to those things, it's a handshake, it's hi girl, hey, hi, hey, how you think?
It can be a lot. It can be a lot.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So
Mhm.
for me, it's I'm gonna send you a note, or I might send you a text. I might even shout you out on Facebook. Congratulations on that event. I'm so happy that it happened. But for my
Mhm.
balance, so I think the taking care of ourselves is one of the big things too that
Yeah.
people have had to remind me to take care of myself as well.
Oh, I mean, excellent advice, especially getting into this time of the year where for some of us, we're winding down the calendars, but then prepping to jump right back
For the
into it
new
in a
year.
few
Yeah.
weeks. Some of us are really amped up because we have giving um, targets that we have to meet. I mean, there's just so much going on. So that word of advice about taking care of yourself and looking after yourself is heard and needed.
Please.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Rhonda, as we wrap up, tell us a little bit about what's going on with CWU right now and some initiatives that you all are focused on that the community can support.
Well, one of the biggest things, and goes back to our implementing, changing implementation and thinking and rethinking some things. It's truly is centering mental health and basic needs for um, women, and understanding that we first need to start in those two places and making sure that you're mentally well, and two, that your basic needs are taken care of. And this is regardless of income. Sometimes we learned through COVID that doesn't matter if I got a full-time gig and make whatever. Sometimes those basic needs can get a little shaky. And so
Mhm.
we're really doing a lot of care coordination around women, right? Like really wrap around services head to toe for women. So that's one thing. The mental health piece, we've been able to pay for women to go to mental health providers, like paying copays, and really trying to support some of our providers of color as well in that. So that's one of the big things, I think, and you'll see us doing a lot more and elevating that in 2023. Also, of course, chronic illness still is something that really impacts us, especially Black women. And so our Sisters Together
Mhm.
program, which is our longest running program, we've been able to work with women and teaching them how to self monitor their blood pressure and monitor their A1C at home, and then also providing of additional sources. And so really a lot of things around self-efficacy and how you can do it for yourself. So that's an empowerment piece. And so Sisters
Mhm.
Together also has been um, put a lot of emphasis on, moving more and eating better. Um, we're focusing on 18 to 24-year-olds and their mental health, and doing workshops really geared towards young women, especially young Black women. Um, so there's a lot of things I could keep going on and on, but I think the biggest thing for us is um, really creating one. We want to create and we're working on it, especially with Eskenazi, a clinic, community-based partnerships, and so that we can have direct relationships with healthcare, and making sure that's seamless, and that we're in a place to address medical racism and doing that advocacy
Mhm.
work as well. So I think, like I said, when we're looking at the landscape of health and wellness in Indianapolis, we're figuring out where CWU fits in that makes sense for the whole community, not just we're gonna do it like this.
Yes,
You
I
know what I mean?
love it. I love it. What a fantastic example for us all to hear. So again, Rhonda, thank you. Thank you so much
Well, thank you, Evan.
for all that you do in the community.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I will be talking with you very soon.
Uh,
All right. And thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of The Convo. You can learn more about CWU at cwuonline.org, and you can find out more about Leadership Indianapolis at leadershipindianapolis.com. Have a great Monday afternoon, you guys, and take care. Bye bye.